President, how are you again?
How are you, Peter?
How are you? Mr. President, how are you?
Fine, you? Good. How are you? Fine. How are you? How are you? Again.
Good to see you.
You could have done without that. I lost it.
Yeah.
That's all right. You lost it.
We did, yeah. We were all launching lots of books.
President Grant, press conference going on. Look a little more lively.
What's the pledge you have, President?
It's my Santa Claus bag. It's the Christmas time. It's the only thing I can wear besides an American flag.
Yes. Hardly non-controversial, yeah.
I don't know.
Santa Claus is
Everything's controversial.
Still, thank you very much.
Thank you
Still,
all.
thank you. Thanks for your lettering. Still, thank you. This way, please.
Hi, Tony.
Next will be the American rule.
Well, this one's been here since I first came.
Yeah.
This was new to me.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
Is everyone in? Let me say I'm delighted to have Prime Minister Bruton here again today, along with the members of his government. We're going to talk about Northern Ireland today. And I want to reiterate my call for the IRA to institute a ceasefire in words as well as deeds. If they do that, I am convinced that Sinn Féin will be invited to participate in the talks, and we believe that substantive and inclusive peace talks are the only way to resolve this. Meanwhile, the talks go on. Senator Mitchell is doing a terrific job, and I want to say also a word of appreciation to the Loyalists for holding the ceasefire. I think that's a very good thing. We can't make peace until we end violence, and that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can keep working on that.
Do they await the British elections? I mean, this whole the question of movement and progress?
Maybe the Prime Minister ought to answer that.
I'd like to say that I completely endorse what the President just said. On the contrary, I think an immediate ceasefire would have advantages that a postponed ceasefire wouldn't necessarily carry. I think it would set a policy position in regard to Sinn Féin's participation in talks in place before an election, which would carry through into the next British Parliament in a much more durable way. Whereas a postponed ceasefire after the election would go into the term of office of a new government with perhaps a new opposition, and there would be a much less certainty about the response. So I agree entirely with what the President has said. I think from every point of view, from the point of view of their own movement, from the point of view of maximum opportunity, from the point of view of maximum durability of inclusive talks, a ceasefire now is the right choice for the Republican movement to make. And I'm very, very, very heartened that the President has said that again in such clear terms.
The British and the Irish governments have made enormous efforts here. But we can't succeed, they can't succeed unless there is a ceasefire, an end to the violence, and we ultimately have inclusive talks, and I'm convinced that will happen if there is a ceasefire.
Mr. President, could we ask you about domestic issues, sir? Charles Tree, a friend of yours, do you agree with the decision to return the money he attempted to deliver to your legal defense fund?
Yes and yes.
Were you aware he was raising money for your legal defense fund?
Not until I came in. But I supported the decision. I was aware of the decision to return the money because, and I think, you know, in all these fundraising endeavors, the rule should be that all the checks should be checked to make sure that not only the fact, but any even appearance of impropriety should be removed. And Mr. Cardozo was interested in the appearance of that, so was I, and that's why the decision was made. That's what our campaign did, and as the Democratic Party's people have said, that's what they should have done. But the campaign did it, the Legal Defense Fund did it, and I think it was handled in the appropriate way.
Is he a close friend? Is he a close friend of yours?
I've known him a long time. I knew him when he and his family came over and started a little restaurant about a mile from my home 20 years ago. And I saw them start with nothing and build up their family enterprise. They've worked very hard in this country, and they've done well.
Cool, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Back to your left, please. Thank you. Cool, thank you. Cool, thank you.
Now we're getting the real story. What? The Irish press comes in.
Oh gosh, I had to do it to them. This would be like a Jesuitical examination.
You're going to see our analysis.
Okay, now,
How many Irish Jesuits are there?
the Irish cool.
Just one job. Less than they used to be.
President of Georgetown, Leo O'Donnell.
President Clinton, when you meet with Mr. Bruton today, do you think there's been a lot of discussion over just what Sinn Féin has to do in order to get to the table? But is there anything else that Britain can also do to encourage Sinn Féin to get to the table at this point?
Well, that's what we're going to discuss, all of that. You know, I just want to say again that first, I appreciate what the Irish and British governments have done today. Secondly, I still believe the IRA should immediately call a ceasefire in words as well as deeds. I'm convinced that Sinn Féin will be invited to participate in the talks if that happens. And I think inclusive talks are the only way to make peace. Talks will go on. Senator Mitchell, I think, is doing a fine job. The loyalists should be commended for holding the ceasefire. But the peace will not come in the presence of violence. It must come with the absence of violence. I'm convinced of that. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Mr. President, in the event of an IRA ceasefire, do you personally believe that Sinn Féin should get immediate and automatic access to the talks process?
Well, I believe that Sinn Féin would be invited to participate in the talks fairly soon thereafter. That's what I believe. But we have to talk about the details, you know. The Prime Minister has to keep me educated here, you know. The texture of the Irish peace struggle is rather complex.
With all your foreign policy challenges in the second term, will Ireland still be a priority as it was in the first term?
Yes.
Mr. President, what was your reaction to this attempt to smear Martha Pope in some of the British newspapers?
She's a fine woman and a friend of mine, and I understand that the charge has been retracted. And if that's true, that's good. It should have been. We ought to have more false charges retracted in this world. And I'm pleased by that.
Do you know anything about a possible ceasefire that would inject new life into the peace talks?
I know nothing more than you do probably about that. We're going to talk about it. I know we're working for it. We keep working for it.
Mr. President, there is a perception that the talks in Northern Ireland are going nowhere at the moment, that an agreement on decommissioning, which looked close this week, is not now likely in the immediate term. Are you as pessimistic as some people are in Northern Ireland?
No, we can't afford pessimism. I mean, after all, if you just look at the whole sweep of events in the last 3 years or so and compare that to the previous 25 years, I still think that things are moving right along here. We're in a rough patch, but if we just keep at it, I think it'll come out all right.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, right.